The most important job to me is really simple, if you think about it. First of all, the director of a film is a storyteller. In fact, everybody who he's working with is there to help tell one story. So the director's primary job is to be the shepherd of that story, take care of the story, and tell the story as clearly, as honestly, and as authentically as possible. I say story, not the script. The script, which we can talk about later, is a step towards getting the story told. In terms of your question, what you're asking about, in terms of the story being told, at the center of the story, the most important part of the story, are the characters. It's the characters who tell the story. Not the cinematography, not the production design, not all those other elements. All those other elements are a support system to the story. So the director needs to be focusing on the story and then on the characters. And the strength of the performances, the authenticity of the performances, the clarity of characters, the clarity of relationships, the clarity of the journey of each character is really crucial in order to tell the story well. That's the primary focus of a director. And if a director can't do that or loses sight of that, the story is going to start to wobble. And we've seen that a lot, stories which wobble simply because of performance, even though a lot of the other elements may be brilliant, like CGI and special effects and all that. All that stuff is beautiful, it's wonderful, but it's not the story.
There's a joke that you'll hear sometimes on set, like who has the least amount of experience on a set? And almost always it's the director. It's just the nature of getting to a directing position can be very, sometimes it's who you know, sometimes you wrote a script and you're being, who knows? And I think one of the things that has to be the most challenging for a new director or an inexperienced director is there's this big machine moving. And at this point, for somebody like me, I have a lot more to learn, but I've been doing it for a long time. And so when we're looking at a scene and an actor's like, oh, actually, I don't want to sit here. I want to get up and I want to go stand by the window, is for some directors, that might freak them out completely. Because they don't know, they've made a plan, and then as soon as something breaks in the plan, be that an actor's decision or maybe bad weather or a location falls through or there's an equipment malfunction, is the ability to change and still, whatever that intention of the scene is that you can still find it, but using none of what you planned. And I think for a newer director, that's got to be so hard.
Because, actors and everyone on the crew, they want to know what we're doing. They want to know exactly what it is you want and what the vision is and everything. So they just appreciate that. And even, sometimes there were moments where it's like, oh, I should do another take, but I don't really want to ask that from the actors who've done it so many times, or for the crew or everything. So it's like, yeah, no, it's fine. We can move on. And then you kicking yourself afterwards. But that's another thing that I've learned. I heard from crew who had worked on this other movie with this director who was just doing take after take after take, and they were working all throughout the night, but the crew didn't hate him. Instead, it was he really knows what he's after. Really, it was almost like this respect of he has his vision. So it was oh, okay, they don't hate you if you're a perfectionist about something, or if you really want to get something right. It's more like they respect the fact that you're not going to give up until something is really good, because everyone wants to work on good movies. They want to be proud of yeah, I worked on that movie. No one's going to be yeah, that movie I worked on was but we got home at 5 p.m. It's people want to be proud.
Mostly it's about trust, but it's also about the creation of a universe in which there can be nothing but truth. That's to say, the staging, the costumes, the lighting, the set, everything has to have a default of authenticity, so that when that actor is in that world, he can only be, rather than try to present or portray. He can just exist in that space and let things happen spontaneously. And I think that is probably the simplest way to put it.
The environment is created by the director. So the director, basically, the mood on set is going to be based on how the director is feeling that day. And if I was throwing tantrums and yelling at everybody, probably it wouldn't have been a great set to work on. But I arrived and we were laughing and joking and having a fun time from the second we started. And so everybody was laughing and joking and having a great time. And that really helped. We actually, my producer, Gina, who's the producer on all the movies as well, she and I have a no policy on the set. We actually give people a warning. So when we hire them, we say, hi, listen, the only drama that happens on the set is going to be on screen. So if you're going to be dramatic in any way and cause problems, you are welcome to leave. You don't have to stay. Nobody is making you work here. If you don't like it, you are absolutely welcome to leave. But if you do like it, we'd love for you to stay and let's have a great time. We're going to go and make a movie. And it's not rocket science and it's not brain surgery and people's lives aren't on the line here. So let's just go and have a fun time creating something. And so that goes over really well with a lot of crew members. And if there have been a few times when we've had some crew members that have been, and actors, people that have not been nice. And so we kindly invite them to leave.
The minute I arrive on set, you say good morning everyone, and the first place I go is the wardrobe truck. So the makeup truck. So I meet my actors in the morning, say good morning, and make sure that they're comfortable with the day ahead of them. And it's the first thing I do is say good morning to everybody. The number one rule I have is always trust your instinct. Your instinct is never wrong. So if you have a bad feeling about someone you're about to employ or cast or a location or a scene that's not right, there is a problem. And to acknowledge that and talk about it, that's definitely one of the things that I live by.
In order to direct a movie to make sure it comes out the way you want it to, you have to understand cinematography, and on the other end, you have to understand editing. If you can understand those two things and do as much of that as you possibly can in the beginning, edit yourself, then you will be able to direct an editor. You'll be able to say, no, that cut should come 10 frames later, and you'll be able to guide an editor to in that all-important step of putting those images together in the way that you see them in your mind. Again, too many people, I think too many young filmmakers, even too many students go, well, I'm going to get an editing student to cut my film, my student film. And you're like, yeah, but not yet. Like, you cut it first. Cut it first. It may not be as great. It may not be as finessed as that editing student who is only thinking about that. But unless you get, again, familiar with putting two shots together and seeing what works and what doesn't work, you're never going to feel confident giving notes to an editor, because you'll be like how a lot of producers who are not savvy in that way are just going, well, just make it good, when I wake up in the morning, there'll be an edit and it'll be a movie. But I don't know how it happened.
Also, as a director, you are scared to not live up to the role that is expected from you. And I think that every day when I come to set, I are in almost panic. Oh my God, this is being so bad. And the idea that I have here on the script, I thought it would be so good. But as soon as you set up the camera and you start shooting, then you feel like, how should I solve this, And in the beginning of a career, then you are afraid to expose that. But when the more that you have worked, then you actually can be transparent and you can say, I don't know yet, but give me an example. Let's try. And you try out the scene. Oh, it's not in that way. And when you are transparent with it, then you can find a solution of how to deal with the scene and not be too obsessed with yourself playing a role of being a director. Because insecureness is something that is very important if you're a director, because that's connected to your instrument. So when you feel it's not right, but that's right, and it's still not right, but there it is. The only thing that you should be able to do as a director is being true to your instrument. So in the moment when you find it, there it is. Then your profession is how do you say it? That's what you're aiming for, to get that moment. And if you don't stay true to your instrument and just want to pretend that you are in control, then you're losing the reason why you should be a director.
There are so many smoke breaks between Todd and Joaquin. that there are a lot of questions.
That's its own movie right there. You should have gotten B-roll of that.
Oh, I know. Just like the cigarette break. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of being a director, and certainly is they have conversations that are like wonderful and myriad of stuff that I'm frankly not necessarily always privy to. So I think they talked for hours. They talked after hours. There were a lot of questions and a lot of conversations about who the character was. That's all in there. It's not like Joaquin had a very keen sense and then that was it and we shot it for 58 days. That we were adjusting it all the time. It's, I think, one of the things that Todd does really well is also just that he's super fluid as far as recognizing that the movie is being made every day and you're discovering what the movie is every day. You have a plan, but you're really making the movie day by day and it's adjusting day by day. So, you know, you're making adjustments to the character and you're discovering new things about the character and all of these things. And so that's happening all the time. And Todd's really good about allowing that to happen because I think it's a really good trait in a director is to not be so single-minded and focused on your plan that you lose sight of potentially a better plan.
I want somebody who both brings ideas and has, you know, very strong feelings, but is also collaborative, you know, and is willing to, if a better idea is presented, you know, whether it's the producer or the actor or the craft services person, is open to considering that, you know, because it's about the movie we are all making, not about, you know, their ego. So that's my preferred archetype.
It's been a hard journey because it felt like I was giving up directorial vision at first. Because frankly, I think I had a misunderstanding of what like directorial vision is. I think I thought it was, oh, I'm gonna micromanage every single detail. And what I've really come to realize is that if I know very clearly what I want the audience to feel, what the point of the movie is, if I know that and I can communicate it, then I can actually delegate a surprising amount of work and I will literally get that thing I wanted because people who know the point and know the goal, but then have space to sort of do their own work, they produce excellent work. And if you communicate well, it is work entirely in sync with what you wanted.
You kind of direct every scene as best you can. And then sometimes there's moments where you go like, wow, this could be the best scene in the movie. So I don't know if you just try to service the story the best you can. So some movies, like I feel like you want the hand of the director to push you around and push the camera, move the camera, and other movies you want to, you know, romantic comedy like Wedding Singer, I wanted to just step back and not feel the director's hand. So in that movie, I used colors to tell a story. Adam goes from like, when he's happy, blue. When he gets his heart broken, the camera dollies and you see red brick behind him. From that point on, he's in all maroons and reds because he's heartbroken. He has like, his worst part is he goes to a red wedding. It's Italian, silver, black, garish, and he has the love stink scene. He freaks out. And then he still has the broken heart of his ex, but then he's starting to meet Julia, who's happiness again. And in the bar mitzvah, it's all blue. He still has his red jacket. They bond over the little girl, and he takes off his red jacket because he finally loses the other girl, his broken heart. So that was done in a way that you didn't feel the director doing it, but subconsciously, it's there. Other movies, I like flying the camera around and like, you know, click this canted angles and you just try to service every scene the best you can.
That's the thing that I think is the most dangerous is when, you know, the director has a very, an idea that he or she is very excited about and they want to front load the actor with it before they even do anything. And they overtalk. It's the simplest thing is overtalking. I finally boiled it down to telling directors, listen more than you talk and be percentage about that. Hear your own voice less than 50% of the time when you're talking to actors. Listen to them more than you talk to them. And that's a big thing that actors complain about is directors that overtalk. but they still don't understand what the director wants. That's just so easy to happen, and that's so very simply circumvented if the director understands the tool of emotional event, because that's takes much less time to talk about. And then if you can say to the actors, wait, this is not a family, nice people being nice. This is an argument, and then let the actors get there however they get there, instead of sort of well, now you have to get mad, and then you have to be disappointed, and then you have to get mad back, and now you have to, and that's micromanaging, is sort of giving the result for each emotional turning point that you want. That's another way to micromanage, rather than allowing each actor to have a through line objective, something they want or need from the other actor, and an obstacle, of course, very useful, and then let the ins and outs of how they win the argument or lose the argument, let that happen in the moment. If they both want something from each other.
I always find that less is more. And I find the more direct directors can be when they're talking to actors, the better. Certainly, I've been on both sides of that equation. Obviously, I'm an actor as well, so I find that the more delicate a director tries to be, the more frustrating it is for everyone involved. I find the more direct you can be and the less you can say, the better you are. The better it is for everybody.
The skill of listening. I learned that it's important to listen to people, because sometimes you may have an idea and what you want, and the DP or your producers or the actors may have a different way, and it's important to listen to them, because they may be telling you something that you won't find out until post. And then you go, oh, that's a good reason. That was a good reason.
And this is from learning from my mistakes, right? Because I became obsessed in making my early short films about how everything looked. And it had to look good. Everything had to look, it had to have that camera move, it had to have that lens, it had to have that lighting. And you sort of forget that people watch people first. There's no point in going to all the effort and time and money and emotion, everything, making a film if your actors are miscast. It's just, it's pointless. You could have the best script in the world. You could have Chinatown, but with really horrible actors, it'd be a horrible movie. Whereas, Chinatown with amazing actors shot on a phone, might be not your cup of tea, but it'd still be a good movie.
Bob would come up and he treated us like young professionals. So if you were fooling around being a kid, that's great. And now we're shooting and you drop your line, he'd walk over. And I remember there's one scene I dropped my lines 3 or 4 times, and I think I was distracted and I was being a silly little kid. I was like, and Bob walks over, he's like, hold on, cut, hold on everybody. And he walks over to me and he puts his arm around me. He was very fatherly. He's like, all right, Zach, I'll run the line. And I ran it. He's like, good. Okay, run it again. I did. He's like, good. One more time. One more time. Wait, what was that line? Okay, dude. One more time. And again. Ooh, you know what? One more time. And again. And one more time. Starts walking back, goes, wait, Zach, what was that line? Perfect. Thank you. Let's go. Because he expected you to be a professional, but he was also a father, so he was very kind. And that sort of set a standard for have fun, but bring your A game and show respect to the set. And you can have fun and dick around when you know your lines.
But if there are 8 people in a room, and it's even just a 2-page scene, but everybody needs their own coverage. I shot a show, I shot 2 seasons of a show that has, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 main characters, and sometimes they all get together for dinner, and it is a nightmare of 180 lines, and it is it's really, in hindsight, I'm glad I've done it, because now I feel like I have a good handle and approach on those, but those are really difficult scenes. And so 2 pages with 12 actors is harder than 10 pages with 2 actors. So it's an interesting added dynamic. It's like exponentially more difficult for every additional character that's in a room. Unless you have a director who's very intentional and like, sure, there are 11 people in here, but only this person matters. And when they have the fortitude to just stick with that, and actually all we really need is a shot that pushes in here and maybe a wide, that's great. But usually everybody wants to cover their butt. And so they're like, well, we're gonna need a close up here and close up. And they generally people, which bums me out, but every line of dialogue that's spoken by anybody, they're like, well, we have to get that in this shot. It's like, well, you don't have to actually. And most of the great filmmakers don't bother with that. It's intention. It's what's the scene about. It's not about every person, hopefully, though sometimes it is. It's usually focused in on 1 or 2 people, their dynamic, and you're trying to capture that. And so you let that lead your decisions. But yeah, if it's a high number of pages that you're shooting per day, it's challenging. It's really hard, and I do not enjoy it. The lower the number of pages, I mean, it's similar to setups. If it's fewer pages, they're going to be shot better. It's going to be more cinematic or more intentional. And if it's a high page count, I hope I get another job offer then, because it's tough. It's exhausting. And it really what gets sacrificed first is the light. Your light, you can't shape the light as much because you need to look generally so many different directions. And so it's a lot trickier to be intentional about your lighting.
The first AD, this woman who was the first assistant director, said, now just on my first day on the set, said, I just want you to know that Andrea doesn't say action and she doesn't say cut. I said, oh, well, what does she say? Well, she's probably going to want you to talk your way into the scene, into the flow of the beginning of the scene. And when she feels you're in the right place where the scene begins, she'll probably say something like, okay, off you go, which is exactly what she did. It was so liberating because usually it's like action and everyone like tenses up, and it was a fantastic way to work. And so I stole that from her in a way. I mean, it's not an original idea, but to really talk your way, particularly if like now actors are taping stuff in their homes for auditions. And so I said, let's improv into the scene. Just cut out the stuff that's not on the page when you actually edit it, but then you're in the flow of what just happened. And that's really, screen acting is so different because you're playing little pieces of a pie. You have a big pie with all these pieces and you're playing this little piece and this little piece and this little piece, and they're out of sequence. So you really have to figure out where they fit.
Very often, too often, they say nothing to the actor. They'll go on to talk to the cameraman, they'll talk to sound, all that's appropriate, but somehow the actor is ignored. Or they'll say, okay, fine, we're moving on. My thing is, the first thing you say to an actor after every take, even after every rehearsal, is always say, thank you, very good. Acknowledge the work. My contention is that an actor is always doing the best they can with the information they have. Just acknowledge that. Even if it's not what you want, even if you don't like it, say thank you, very good. Acknowledge the effort. Because the reason for this is one of the director's primary jobs working with actors, and this is not a difficult one to do, but a lot of directors don't do it, is to create a really safe place. A safe place is an environment that has literally no criticism. Any director who criticizes an actor for performance is shooting themselves in the foot, because as soon as an actor is criticized, they start to shut down inside. And you want their emotional system and their life experience to be available to you, and you are going to criticize them. It's not going to happen. They will keep acting, and that's what you'll get, is acting. You won't get good, authentic performances. To create that safe place, there are many ways, but one of them is constantly acknowledge them and constantly praise them. Just say, thank you, very good. That's all it has to be. Nothing more than that.
If I'm directing a play, I'm trying to show the person that's doing the part, the work, that there is a difference between acting something and being a human being and experiencing something, sharing yourself. What I'm trying to say is, if you want to, from what this was for me, why I got into it was the notion that I could honestly share of myself with other people. That human transaction was what it was all about, period. End of story. That's what it was about. So when I direct a play, I try to maximize the human experience of being a person, and what that really feels like and what that really sounds like is very different when someone's telling the truth versus I'm clever and I know how to act something. And that experience, when you have the human experience, it transcends like that's a good actor. It transcends that became you affected me personally. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that, what I would say is get real with yourself and tell the truth in your work. That's what I would say.
And I had an actor friend tell me one time that an actor's performance is a reflection of the director. If they are not opening up, it's probably because you're not opening up. If they are not feeling as deeply as you want them to feel, then that probably means that you're not feeling as deeply as you want. And I've had this happen on set where it's like, in fact, when I was experimenting with working with actors, I had an actress come to me and she says, and I was telling her, like, you're not opening up to your scene partner. You need to open up. I'm a mechanic still. I'm trying to turn the knob. Open. It's not working. And she was frustrated. She said, yeah, I get this note all the time, and I don't know what the problem is. And so that's where I got this advice. Maybe it's a reflection of the director. So I said, okay, well, that's interesting about that is because she is not someone I personally care for. She's a nice person, but I didn't really connect to her. So I was resisting getting to know her or opening up personally to her. Now, I'm not telling her this, I'm just being honest. So the next time she showed up, I made a point to ask her about her kids, to get to know her a little bit, and just to maybe I can find a way for me to personally, as a director, connect to who she is. And she bloomed. I get really emotional talking about this, but it's so vital because that's what you need. You need them to open up and be there because that's what the camera sees. You want them to see that look in their eyes that gets them to be there. And it requires you as a director to be open as well. I get emotional about this stuff because I think it's important. I think Video Village becomes the shelter to shout your directions at because they're doing something you're terrified to do. Actors are doing the thing that is unnatural for the rest of us, to be naked in front of the world, not just physically sometimes, but emotionally. Those actors that you're drawn to are the ones that are just so raw. Joaquin Phoenix being one, you can't take your eyes off him because he's just so out there. That's what you need. That requires you as the director to be there right there with them. So when it comes to directing actors, that's where you begin.
One of my great acting teachers, when I was a very young actor, when I asked a similar question, he said, I'm going to make it real simple for you. He said, it's like falling into darkness backward. Imagine just falling into darkness backward. No control of your landing, if you're going to be caught or not. Just fall. Everybody said, well, suppose there's a rock back there, or suppose there's I don't know, no pillows and just hard floor. The writer is saying to you, I want you to fall into darkness backward. I've given you all the description, the director and I, of who the character is. We've had rehearsals and discussions about who this human being is. I do not want you to describe them to me. I want you to become them by falling into darkness backward. Can you do that?
Yeah, a friend of mine is a female director who's very successful in TV right now. And before she did her first episode, she asked some other huge TV director, I forget who that was, if you had to give me one piece of advice, what would that be? And he said, make sure you have someone that is on your team, meaning that has not been hired by production, has not been suggested by the producers, but someone that you have worked with and trust and that you bring into the project. Which doesn't seem obvious in the beginning because you are so taken by all the great talented people that production is throwing at you, that you are happily taking that one. And in the beginning, everything is rosy anyway. The energy is like everybody's excited, there are no problems, blah, blah, blah. You will find yourself in a situation where everything is so crazy and there are conflicts and you are not completely sure that it's not you going crazy. Especially because if production comes with all their people, they owe each other loyalty. Like if you have a TV show, for example, where they've already done 10 episodes, I'm doing the 11th episode. This whole team has me on set for a week, but knows that the next year of their employment depends on being in good graces with the producers. If there now is a conflict, you will not suddenly have the team stand up for you, which on a movie set you would, because you put the team together, you stuck your heads together creatively to make this happen. And if there's a conflict with the money side of things, you are anchored in your creative people that give you the confidence that you are pursuing the right thing for the right reason. In TV, you don't have that, for example. So what she was saying, to even have one person there, she brought her cinematographer, where she said, no, I want to hire my own cinematographer, blah, 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 made a world of a difference because she knew that she had one ally on set. And again, that's really hard and sounds very negative to think of conflict in the beginning when everything is just fireworks and everything is great. But I think that's a smart way to do. And if there is no conflict, I've yet to see that set where there is no conflict. But if that happens to be the case, then great, you know. But at least you have some kind of insurance of having someone who has your back and is not beholden to the producers.
Every actor is different. Many directors are frightened of actors. They feel like they're a different species. Well, they're not. They're human beings. You know, there's a whole range of cliches about actors, that they might be narcissistic or self-important or overly dramatic or whatever. And some of them are, just like directors, just like anybody. But really, what your job is as a director is to help the actor be able to utilize their particular process, how they work. And so that it involves kind of reading each human being that you're approaching to direct for who they are and how you can connect to them. It's a very intimate experience.
When this actor shows up, very famous actor, well-known, and I don't think he really knew what he was getting himself into, but he showed up on set and he's kind of like, where am I? He was late, they couldn't find the set, and he was upset about that. And I think he was like, whoever greeted him, they didn't get a very good vibe from him, and they were like scared and they ran off, and there was like some other shouting and whatever happening, and I was like, and I think my personality as just myself, like I don't really like let that stuff penetrate. I just listen to what they're saying and I try to like take what they're saying and react to it logically and with empathy. So I listened to what this guy was saying, and he was definitely trying to test. This was my first time getting tested as a director, and I'd heard of this happening before, and I'd seen it on other sets, but I never had to experience it myself. And it was definitely like a challenge for a second, but I anticipated this. So what I had done was, I heard that he could get a little testy in certain situations. So I found out what his favorite food was. I found out what kind of stuff he likes to have around him, what kind of environment he likes to be in, and I made sure that was there for him, right? So I had him in a private room. It was like a really nice sort of like penthouse area in the area that we were shooting. Very comfortable place, nice couches, pretty makeup lady, and delicious vegan food, which is what he liked. And I walked up to him. He was in the middle of a little bit of a tirade. It wasn't a super big one, but it was definitely like there was irritability in his eyes and his voice. And I just walked up to him and I was like, "Hey, thank you so much for coming. Don't worry, we have your favorite food upstairs. You know, I forget the makeup lady's name at the time, but I was like, she's ready, waiting for you. You know, whatever you need, she's there. Whatever you need. Also, we have a couple cool props for you, and you're going to be playing a guy that's 500 years old and has the ability to affect people through the use of cell phone technology." And he was just kind of like, and I gave him something to like think about for a second. He was like, "Oh, it's gonna be a cool character." So he like went upstairs with it and came back down. He had like one fingernail painted black and like a crazy cane that he had found up there, and he was like walking with a limp. And I was like, "What's the limp for?" And he's like explaining his character's backstory to me, and he came up with all this stuff. So I gave him a bunch of stuff to work with to keep him happy and distracted, but also he took all that and made a better character out of it. So, you know, you just gotta you gotta direct that energy. As a director, you gotta take whatever energy is coming towards you and make it somehow funnel it to where it's gonna make your film better. So if they're coming at you with some negative energy, I think you gotta take that and convert it into either something for their character or, you know, give them something to direct that towards so it becomes either diluted or good energy.
I think that the director automatically wants respect, but they don't necessarily deserve it. I think, and when you see frustration from directors, it's because they don't have any respect and people are just walking all over them. That usually comes from a director that is not prepared or not prepared and just not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. They need respect. They should have respect because you're in charge of usually something larger. Even if it's a smaller production, you know, you still got some money on the line. But you're the person in the position of a pile of money. You have a target that you're aiming for at the end of it with some sort of story or something. You have to dictate things to all these other departments. And if they don't have your respect, they are not going to be delivering their best work more than likely, because if they don't like you, if they don't respect you or don't want to be there, they're going to probably just trying to power through the day. That's a really bad, you don't want your team members in that position. And I don't think that if you find yourself in that position, this is not necessarily because you have experience or not. That's not, usually doesn't have anything to do with it. It usually has to do with your preparation. Directors who are not prepared really lose the respect of their crew very quickly, because the worst possible thing you can do on set as a director is not know what you want. To sit there, the clock is ticking, and you're going, we should put the camera. So if we put the camera here, and then it makes everyone crazy, and they're going to start rolling their eyes and being very frustrated with you. And they're going to start second guessing your decisions and things like that. Coming into your location beforehand and knowing they're going to enter through this door and they're going to go out through that door, and I want to just move the camera this way. You don't have to know every little detail, but having an idea of what you want is super important. And you could do that without experience. And if you don't know how to even shoot a scene, you can get your DP to help you with that, as long as you know what you want. That comes from preparation. Even having like an idea of, say for example, wardrobe, you know, I want it to look like this guy has been up all night. That can be enough of a description for your wardrobe person. At least now they know what you want. Okay, so he slept in his clothes. Okay, good. And so a little bit of wrinkles in? Yeah. You know, that kind of thing. If you came in and you're like, I don't know, he's just wearing like clothes like normal. That's maddening to work for. You're going to lose the respect of everybody really quickly. So it's absolutely vital to have respect, but it's not something that you will get just automatically. But you can get it by making sure you're doing the work.
First and foremost, I needed people to connect to the story in a way that I felt would honour the film. I mean, it's such an emotional film that no one can dial it in. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, you might be presented with A-listers, but if they're not totally passionate about it, I don't want them. Do you know what I mean? So they had to be very passionate about the story. Each character had a different need. So for instance, what I loved about Nicole Kidman, for example, is that there's kind of a strength in Nicole Kidman that I saw in Sue. So there's a lot of similarities I could start to see emotionally. So I don't know, a lot of things started to become quite apparent to me when I was dreaming the characters and meeting the actors. It became quite obvious who was right. They just care about it. Mm-hmm. They can talk about it from their own point of view. They can own it. They can have an opinion. They're deep in the material. So that's really important. You know, when I met Nicole in New York to talk about the role, she just spoke about it in such a deep way and how it related to her life, and imagine that, and we just had such a deep conversation. So that's a place you're starting from. I mean, of course the performances are going to be amazing, you know, because we're going to go to such deep and honest places together. So yeah, it's really important, I think.
Working with Edith now doesn't seem intimidating, but then it was extremely intimidating, because here's an actress whose first project was the pilot episode of The Guiding Light when it was on the radio in the 40s. It might have been early 30s, but it was early, 50 years of work, who's worked in everything from radio to television to most recently at that time with David Fincher. It was terrifying for a college student who hadn't graduated from college yet. And I was trying to figure out, you know, how am I going to work with this woman who has far more experience than me that just happens to like this screenplay that I wrote. And so when she arrived, you know, I had someone go pick her up at the airport. I booked her a nicest hotel in town, you know, made sure she got the VIP treatment as best a college student could give. And when she arrived to set, I was instantly disarmed because she knew it. She knew the script by heart. It was 10 pages, but she could recite every single line because she had rehearsed far before she arrived. So the first thing she taught me is that if you want to work with an actor, clarify your vision at the onset and make sure that you're going to work with someone who takes that role just as seriously. There are a lot of actors that don't take their roles seriously, that don't read a role and really try to dive into it. And so for me, Edith taught me first and foremost, find those people that really care about what they're doing, because that's going to make your work better. It's not just a paycheck. So the second thing she taught while she's on set is that while I may not have the experience that she did, she deferred those things to me, which empowered me as a director to direct my college-aged crew to give me respect, which I thought was also very important, because at the time, you know, in college we're taking film classes where people cycle around. You know, I might direct one project and then run the sound on another one, shoot the next one. You're kind of learning different skills. And people don't take it seriously because it's a class, but because Edith Ivey, who has 50 years of experience, who just worked with David Fincher, showed up, suddenly I had authority to do what I wanted to do. So I think those early lessons for me were very formative and kind of taught me that it doesn't matter how much experience someone else on your crew or someone else that you're directing might have. It only matters that you as director have authority over your set and that there's a singular, cohesive vision that everyone can follow and respect.
But it's always a question of tone and genre, whatever you're doing, and finding the specific tone. And I remember one particular event during shooting was, because Roar really knows this genre and he loves it, and he's seen so many films of this genre. His heart lives there. And I remember he said to me, "Oh, now when you're leaving that room, when you made that phone call, just a little smile." Yes, of course. That's how you do it in this particular universe. So it's a question of tone, and more than Norwegian or American, I think. I don't know, but yeah, I think so.
That ability to think on your feet, I think, is one of the most valuable things, especially for TV, because it's so fast-paced, or a lower budget feature. You just can't stop. You have to go, go, go. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And I don't know how to like advise a director exactly on it, because some of it is just hours, just doing it more and learning. So, so I guess going back to similar to my job or an actor's job is preparation, is knowing that they know what a scene or a whole piece needs to feel like or be like. And then the ability to improvise, I guess. If you're too rigid and then something falls apart, will you be able to adjust? I guess that's, and maybe not. And maybe, there are directors like David Fincher who are just like, he is going to get what he wants the way he wants it, so it's not like being precise is wrong. It's just on the shows I've been on, you can't get everything perfectly. And so how do you still make it work?
So the first thing that I like to do is when I'm with the actors on set, I like to practice, or, we like to have our own time. So I kind of like send the crew away and say, okay, we're gonna have a little rehearsal here. And the first thing I do is I always come to the set prepped. So I have my little iPad, and in it I have my little notes. And in the notes I always say, whose scene is this? Because it can be both characters' scene. At some point, either somebody's going to win this scene. So my question is, whose scene is this? And then with that, I look at, okay, are there little tricks, are there little things in this moment, whether it's in the kitchen or a living room or a courtroom, are there things that I can use to show visually, visually whose scene it is? So and a good scene will have both parties, if it's two characters, have moments of being, of winning that scene. So it can't just be one person winning the whole time. So for example, I've had scenes for Saints and Sinners where we have a boss sitting behind a desk and a worker come in, and the worker's standing up and they're telling this boss how they feel about something. And they're going at this boss. And then the boss is like, okay, are you done? And then the boss begins, and then the boss stands up. And now they're the same level, and then the boss walks over around the desk, and they'll stand right, and he's basically in the person's face. So the power level has changed. And so when it comes to the scene, I have that idea already in my mind. Now, what I used to do, which I don't do anymore, but I used to literally tell the characters where they're going to go. Because I have my overheads. I'm always prepared. So I have like a circle here, you move here, blah, 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 blah. It's almost like looking at a football, play. And that's how I used to direct, like when I first started. But now what I do is I know what I want, and I let the characters, or let the actors, do what they're going to do. And then if they give me what I wanted anyway, then great. I win, I get what I want. But if they don't, then I'll say, okay, well, what if you did this? I always ask in the form of a question. And then I'll tell them the reason why. I say, well, when he's standing up, he has the power in the room. He's letting you have it. What are you going to do? Sit there and just take it? No, you have a line, right? I said, what's that line again? And then the person says, okay, what the line is. I said, what if you stood up on that line? It's always a what if. I never tell them what to do, because the idea is I'm trying to get their buy-in. And I get their buy-in when they think that they are part of the solution. So I'm always asking what if, or I say, just a bad idea. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I never tell them what to do. I suggest, and then the actors will usually buy in because it makes sense. it's a nice power play in this case of a change of power. So that's how we kind of typically do that's how I do a scene with actors.
The most important thing to keep in mind is to speak, first of all, privately and quietly with the actor. That's, I've visited people on sets, and I see these directors over in Video Village at the monitor, and cut. No, you're not funny enough. It's got to be funny. Make them laugh, And the actors, oh my God, I just think that's horrible. So I tend to, after every take, even if I don't have a note, I will go to the actor and just, hey, doing good. This is great, And I just try to talk about something softly, because if you give an actor an adjustment publicly, now everyone's watching, and they know now they're being judged. Did they get this note? Did they nail it? Is it still not right? It's a little bit. So I just try to work very privately with the actor and just give them just a gentle thing. And I never give them, as I said, like a line reading. I just try to get them to ask themselves questions about what are you feeling here, And if I feel something's wrong, it's not working, I'll just say to them, so what are you feeling in this, in this scene? And they'll tell me, and sometimes that's like, of course, so that's not at all what we're really doing here. And I'll say to them, well, try this. What if you were feeling this? And usually they'll go with that. There's always a moment where they, nope, I don't want to do that. Then now you're in the bad actor director nightmare, which is very hard for the director to win unless you're a big director. But I find that most of my relationship with actors has mostly been really healthy and positive and respectful. And, I sort of get the courage it takes to do what they do. And I do feel, because as a writer, sometimes you get locked into a certain cadence you hear about the line, the way the line has to be spoken. And the actor doesn't see it that way. And they're not saying it that way. And if it's really egregious, I might say to him something, or her, something specific as, I'd love to hear that, just with the emphasis on that word instead of this word, and see how that, And I get a good result sometimes I don't. And what I've learned is that you just have to let it go at a certain point if the actor is just not doing it, even if they're trying hard to do it. If they don't hear it the way you hear it, it's going to be false if they force themselves to do it. So many a time, I just have to walk away thinking, I'm not going to force them. And the reality is, you're the only one in the world who knows that there was a different meaning about that line or a different emphasis on that line. So it's always going to bother me when I hear it, but no one else is ever going to notice it or feel it. And so you have to kind of let go and not make everything so precious. Because an actor, if you cast the right actor, you want them to bring to the table their interpretation, their quirks, their ideas, and it's going to sometimes bump up against yours. And unless it's something that's really story altering, I almost always go in favor of what the actor wants to do, unless it's just it's crazy. But I trust their instincts, and they know it works for them, and so I'm usually happy to let them do it. By the same token, if an actor ever asks for another take, absolutely. And that can get abusive too. It could be a point where they don't want to move on. They're just going to, let me try one more time. But I think you're crazy. Even though you might have a take that you think is fantastic. That's a great take. I'm ready to move on. You want to move on. You have to move on. But the actor says, can I just try one more? You got to do it, because it might be something incredible. Even if it isn't, the actor knows that they're heard and that they got their shot, and that you're not going to just cut them off.
Yeah, and I'll try to, of course, give notes whenever I can, sotto voce or in private. But sometimes my note giving is actually giving a note to another actor who's hearing it. So sometimes it's like I want it to be public because I want everybody in the scene I might take it as an opportunity to define what the scene's about. And I know that good actors are kind of hearing that. They might play into that. That's, again, enlisting their cooperation, enlisting their talent. They might find other wrinkles in the way they're going to do. So often, I like giving a note publicly because I'm really addressing everybody, because I'm talking about bigger issues.
I love working with this guy. I think he's brilliant. I feel extremely lucky that I've had the chance to now do it 3 times. And I want to do more. And one of the reasons is that he has an access to being honest. And I can feel it right away when Pilu is lying.
Yeah.
I don't call it acting, I call it lying. So I just tell him, you're lying now.
Yeah.
You're not here. You're saying lines, and I don't care about those lines. The thing is, I do believe that every human being can walk into a room and detect what's going on. We have that. It's like a talent that we learn from being in this world. And we don't lose that talent outside the theater. We bring it in. So if people on screen start to be lying, acting, we detect it right away, and it creates a distance between the audience and the film. So we try to get rid of that distance by saying, how would this situation unfold in reality? You wouldn't be so aware of how you sit and how you drink your coffee.
Exactly.
You would just sit down, drink your coffee, and be around.
Yeah.
Let's try to do that. Let's try to take a deep breath and just be here for a while. And that's basically what I tell them. Just be here. Don't say the lines. Don't remember them. I don't care. We can always ask you to say that line again if we need it. But basically try to understand the situation, breathe, and just be here. And that helps everybody, because then we can start to use our talent of reading people as human beings instead of as directors and actors.
You can have the best shot list in the world, but the soft skills help you get somebody out the trailer, help you convince somebody that the work they're doing is great, help you, deal with whatever scenario that might arise, right? I think that a director without humanity is going to have challenges doing their job. Because, I think back to being younger and you're just so focused on, got to get the shot. Like, if everybody would just come here and do what I'm ready to do, we could get, you know what I mean? Like you're just, it's all about getting this thing done. You're feeling the burdens and the pressure of the money, because you're probably over leveraged and you're tired, and why won't they just do what I want them to do? And, that is also natural when you don't have the tools to, deal with the pressures of the job. But I think as you learn them, you do recognize that those soft skills are key.
Yeah, so I do like color-coded notes for each department. So, and then I also, here I'll show you, I'll look at the hot seat one real quick. I have my shot list in here as well, but then what I do, and I draw like little overhead maps of like where I want the blocking to be for each like little location. So you see like little overhead things in here with now we're actually able to print out like what the actual overhead of the location is now, which is pretty cool. So I don't have to draw it by hand fully, but then I'll do like this. So it'll be like actor, hair and makeup, art, props, effects, camera lighting, wardrobe, and then like every single page I'll write in the same color of like what my thoughts are for each thing. So it's every page of the whole script. I pre-direct all of it and kind of come up with like thoughts and ideas throughout all of it. And then that was the most recent one, because apparently I didn't discover until the last one that I could have pens that were made in that color. So what I would do is just write it out and then use a highlighter to highlight it before. And then I would put little colored tabs on every single page.
And what are the tabs?
The tabs would correspond with the color coding. So I'd go, okay, if I see a green tab, this is when I'm with effects, this is what I got to talk to them about, go to the green tab pages. Or like if I'm like, okay, this is the yellow tab pages, or for art, go to all the yellow tab pages to talk to them about that. So it's, and then still see, like, look, there's the evolution. Look at the little overhead blocking maps that I was drawing, but I was having to draw the location, whereas over here, I was able to print out an overhead of the location, didn't have to draw it. I started doing that, yeah. It was from a trial and error, because I so often I'd come on to set and I'd be like, I want to tell you, what was I talking about? I'll be right back. And then I'd leave, right? But what I started doing is like, okay, so this, and I'd like talk to them, right? So I started to write down notes for myself so that if I forgot what I was trying to say, it would be there. Or if I was like, if I was jumbled up or you're moving fast and like, because you call cut and you're like, okay, well, I got to talk to the DP about this. I got to talk to this actor about this. Got to talk to that actor about that. I got to talk to this. So you just refer back to like, okay, well, this is what we were thinking. Great. I have my notes. It's all in a thing. Great. That's all stuff that before even being in the moment, I told myself like a week ago that I wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that brings it back. That brings us where it is. You're shooting a lot of the time out of order too. So it reminds you, okay, this is what you felt was important about this scene. This is the emotion you needed to get out of this scene. This is what needed to happen with art for this scene that you felt was really important, right? This is what you needed the camera to really do for this scene that would get that emotion. Great. We're all there. We're all in the same place. We understand it, so it just brings you back to what that goal was. And it's all stuff that you've gone over with the actors, with the DP, with the production designer, with the costume designer, with the makeup artist before making the movie. You did that in pre-production. So it's just gently reminding people of the conversations you've had and looking for stuff. And it's just pre-planning for everything so you have an eventuality of like maybe something isn't there. Maybe the chalkboard isn't there. So you can go, okay, that wasn't that important to me. This was. So let's move to this next piece of what this would be.